अभी इस वक्त आ गया मैं मनासिया मोनेस्टेरी में।
They were building in hidden places. I mean, imagine that like 600 years ago there was just one hidden path, like a goat path that leads here that only local.
गुड मॉर्निंग एंड वेलकम बैक टू माय चैनल वंस अगेन। और उम्मीद करता आप लोग सब अच्छे से होंगे। और आज एक आखिरी सुबह है मेरी इस बेलग्रेड सिटी में। और मैं कल रात को मिलान के साथ में आया और उसने हमको ड्रॉप करके गया। तो मैं वो होटल ढूंढ रहा था क्योंकि मैंने कल ऑलरेडी जो प्रीवियस होटल था वहाँ से चेकआउट कर लिया था। तो मैं होटल ढूंढकर एक बेलग्रेड रॉयल लग्जरी होटल में आया हूँ। ये मेरे पीछे देख सकते हो, एक चाइनीज़ फैमिली इसे रन करती है। ये लोकेशन है इसका स्वेतेत्रोसीना, पता नहीं मैं प्रोनाउंस सही कर रहा हूँ या नहीं। तो ये मुझे पड़ा है 216 दिरहम में, यानी 50 यूरोज़। अब आप बाकी का कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं, मैंने तो इनको दिनार में दिया है। और रात को आया हूँ मैं इधर और आते ही फ्रेश होके सो गया हूँ। बाकी सारी फैसिलिटीज़ है, उसमें साबुन है, वॉशिंग मशीन है, सेम एज इट इज़ जैसा एयरबीएनबी में होता है वैसा। वैसे मैंने ये बुक किया है agoda.com से, लास्ट मोमेंट पे किया। और बहुत अच्छा सा रूम है। ये है मेरा रूम के विंडो का व्यू। और अभी मैं यहाँ से आपको अंदर ले चल के दिखा देता हूँ। ये है एंट्री इसकी। ये तो सिर्फ रेस्टोरेंट का एरिया है नीचे का, जैसा एंट्री लेंगे तो ये इनके रेस्टोरेंट का मेन्यू है। या बाकी कन्वर्ट कर सकते हैं अपने करेंसी में, सर्बियन दिनार में लिखा हुआ है। मैं यहाँ से चलता हूँ, अपना रूम का व्यू आपको बता देता हूँ। स्टेयरकेस पे से ऊपर जाके और ये है रूम मेरा, डबल बेड वाला है। ये सामान पूरा पड़ा हुआ है। और यहाँ पे खड़े होके मैं वीडियो बना रहा था जो आपने देखा इसके पिछले क्लिप में। और ये है बाथरूम का व्यू, बड़ा मज़ेदार है। यहाँ से छत भी दिखती है। ठीक ठाक रूम है और इतना कौन सा हाईफाई नहीं है, बट 50 यूरोज़ में अच्छा है। आप भी इधर आकर रुक सकते हो। लोकेशन मैं डिस्क्रिप्शन वगैरह में दे दूंगा। तो ब्रेकफास्ट के साथ में वो भी, तो अभी नीचे जाता हूँ मैं ब्रेकफास्ट के लिए। और कल मेरे पास अंडे कुछ बचे हुए थे, तो वो अपार्टमेंट से मैंने बैग में रखा हुआ था एग्जिट करने के बाद में। तो मैं नीचे उसको चाइनीज़ बंदी को दिया हूँ, वो बोली है कि मैं बॉयल करके दे दूँगी। तो मैं फ़्लाइट के काम में आ जाएगा ना। वैसे भी वीज़र है, वीज़र में वैसे भी कुछ होगा नहीं, तो बैग में रख लूँगा। लंबी जर्नी में खाते रहूँगा अपना। अभी मेरा ब्रेकफास्ट आ चुका है, आप देख सकते हो। यहाँ पे ये है चाय और ये है योगर्ट, ऑरेंज और ब्रेड, ये शायद। और साथ में नूडल्स भी है विथ राइस। वेजिटेरियन मैंने ऑर्डर किया था तो ये मंगाया है मैंने। चलो, तो अपना बैगेज वगैरह हो गया। अभी मैं चेकआउट कर रहा हूँ यहाँ से। मिलान नीचे वेट कर रहा है, जाएंगे एक दूसरे कुछ साइट सीइंग के लिए, उसके बाद में एयरपोर्ट।
Okay, I live in Muscat.
Oh, okay.
What do you do?
I'm working in a bank.
Okay.
Now it's not operational.
Good night's sleep.
This was your thought in the morning.
But it's very unlikely that previous thought.
उतरा हूँ मैं, मिलान उतार दिया है यहाँ पे एक पेट्रोल स्टेशन पे। और इस वक्त बज रहे हैं ऑलमोस्ट 9:30। और ये पेट्रोल स्टेशन जो कल आया था क्या गर्म था, आज ठंडा है इधर। तो इधर ना ठंडा गर्म चलते रहता है वेदर के हिसाब में। तो अभी यहाँ से थोड़ा रिफ्रेशमेंट हो के कॉफ़ी वगैरह, वॉशरूम जाके फिर आगे बढ़ेंगे हम लोग। ईस्टर्न यूरोप का टूर है आज का। अरे तो वही है पेट्रोल स्टेशन जहाँ पे कल मिलान ने रोका हुआ था, जो नीस का हाईवे है, जहाँ से मोर देन 10 यूरोपियन कंट्रीज़ का डाइवर्जन दिया हुआ है। और वहीं पे रुका हुआ मैं। और मुझे समझ में नहीं आया, बाद में देख के समझ में आया ये वाली शॉप है ना जो पेट्रोल स्टेशन के पास। और नींद में हूँ यार, अभी भी नींद मार रहा था मैं।
Morava River. Railway bridge that is not used by railway anymore, but for cars, but it's narrow, so you need to
Oh, this is a rail track as well, huh?
Yep.
Oh.
Now we are about to cross the river, the big Morava.
Oh, they stopped.
Yeah, they need to. This is the power plant, electric power plant that we're gonna pass. Feeds the town of Svilajnac and several other counties
Okay.
with electric power.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mentioned to of you yesterday that we have three Moravas. One is Old Morava, and when they two meet, they create Big Morava.
Okay.
We just cross Big Morava, and Big Morava goes into the Danube.
Okay.
Agricultural high school, or high school for agriculture.
Oh.
Very old, very like renowned.
Where they can learn how to grow fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, that's gives you the. I mean, being a farmer, it's
Okay.
not just like, okay, I'm dropping some seeds in the soil and like
Yeah.
that's it. There's much more to it.
Yeah.
Especially for us, we are mainly agricultural country. We produce, for the size of the state, we produce a lot of food. Way more than we need, thank God. This one is not operational, but it will not move. There is another one that was made.
Yeah.
This one simply became. Oh, what is the other English word?
Museum,
Like
type of museum.
this center on the left. You see the big dinosaur.
Okay.
Cool for the kids. For they have some real fossils over there. I mean, we used to have dinosaurs, of course, here as well, like everywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And the mammoths.
Okay.
I actually have I have at home a mammoth tooth that is like 50,000 years old,
Okay.
and the tooth is like this big,
Oh.
like a piece of rock. But you can see it's smaller. The back teeth, the one for chewing. It was found by and this is the agricultural school. You see they have this nice and tidy.
There is a
And this is
buffalo as
their
well.
small like garden where they grow. The school actually grows, and they
Oh.
learn about the crops and maintain them, and experiment, do all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Town, the
Yeah.
one that we are going to pass before we get to Manasija. And there is a lot of different stuff that is underground. So you can imagine that people from this area were like wolves from the Tolkien stories, digging in the mountains and seeking for the riches. Now we are entering the municipality of Despotovac town. And we are still have the best quality coal that we have in Serbia, that stone coal, I think that's how it is called, is digged in the mountains here. But there is also silver, there is gold, copper, mercury,
Yeah.
many different materials. We still have in the east two huge mines in Majdanpek and in Bor. Bor is I think the second largest copper mine in Europe, or actually gravestones. see the big walls, because the monastery is surrounded by a fortress. Actually, it's inside the fort that was built for the reasons that at the time of its construction, the country was already deeply invaded by the Ottomans, by the Turks. So after the famous Battle of Kosovo in 1389, when two armies clashed, the Serbian and the Ottoman Turkish, for safety reasons in these like more northern parts of our country, they started to build fortifications, not only to protect the monasteries but also for the local population that can come and hide when the Turks are with troops are passing through or stealing and do all those kind of things. So there it is, you can see one of its 11 towers. It's very, very well preserved considering the age. It was
अभी इस वक्त आ गया मैं मनासिया मोनेस्टेरी में, और ये इसका एंट्रेंस है यहाँ से। ये कहता है यहाँ पर ड्रोन वगैरह या ऐसे टाइप के ड्रेस आउटफिट और फोटोग्राफी चर्च में नहीं लेना, स्मोकिंग भी नहीं करना है। एकदम नेचुरल ब्यूटी है ना, और चिड़िया की आवाज़ एकदम अर्ली मॉर्निंग में। और आ गया हुआ मैं अंदर, यहाँ ब्यूटीफुल व्यू देखो अभी। सुबह सुबह बच्चे लोग आए हुए हैं यहाँ पर एकदम एज यूजुअल हर दिन की तरह यहाँ पर भी दिख रहे हैं बच्चे ग्रुप टूर पे। और ये मेरे बाजू में है चर्च, ये वाला, और यहाँ पर कैंडल ब्लो कर रहे हैं सब लोग। वाह, मस्त जगह है, आप खाली मज़े लो देख कर।
You hear that people have died trying to get a selfie?
Oh yeah. One of the most known is the Chinese Prince Stefan. And now Prince Stefan is a very interesting character in the Serbian history. He was the son of Emperor Lazar, and Lazar was the ruler of Serbia at the time when the Kosovo battle occurred in 1389. The 1389 28th of June is pretty much the historical date that every child from 2 years and onwards in our country knows, because that was the turning point for us. It was one of the major battles that happened on the most sacred part of our country, which is Kosovo, which is the Serbian Jerusalem. Pretty much, you can completely compare it with Jerusalem, because on Kosovo province was the birthplace of the first Serbian state that was called Raška. So the oldest monasteries, the oldest towns, everything that was created by the Serbians, where we became in a way self-aware as a nation, was created there. So everything, it's like the human body, and it needs to have a heart that pumps and works for everything else. That's what Kosovo means to us.
Okay.
And even at that time, 1389, that was very much the truth. And the Ottomans also knew that. And that was, in a way, the red line for us that couldn't be crossed. Because if that happens, the rest of the country, sooner or later, will be completely occupied. And that's exactly what happened later on. But though the two armies clashed, they completely obliterated each other. There was no victory for neither of the side. Both emperors were killed. Sultan Murad, who was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire at the time, was also killed by the Serbian heavy cavalry that was at that time used like you would use tanks today, pretty much heavily armored horses, big horses with heavily armored knights, and they were used like a hammer. And because Serbia was never that big country, and it needed to be very effective when it was fighting, so they were using this heavy cavalry like a hammering tool. And they were the one of the tactics was to attack the commanding post, or where the tents are of the commanders, or even the ruler himself, which in this case was Sultan Murad, who, knowing how important this battle was, participated the battle himself because he wanted to be sure that his commands and his desires are fulfilled exactly on the field how he wants them to be. So they managed to push through the Turkish lines. They killed Sultan Murad, but Emperor Lazar was also captured by the Turks, and immediately one of the sons of Sultan, who was also present at the battle, Bayazid was his name, he took, they managed to capture the Emperor Lazar, and he ordered that he should be immediately decapitated. So they cut off his head, and the head was actually sent to Istanbul, as it was sitting in the front gates of the old city for 7 days, I guess, as a symbol of the Ottoman victory. And Bayazid immediately took over a charge, and he became immediately the new sultan because the old one just died. Anyways, Emperor Lazar is also one of the most important figures in Serbian history because he stood up against the Ottoman invaders, and unfortunately nobody from the rest of Europe came to help us. We were pretty much alone, and after the battle he was very soon canonized. He became a saint for a very simple reason, because he stood up to fight not only for the country but for the basic principles of, as we spoke yesterday, being alive. It doesn't mean that you actually live.
Yeah.
You're just breathing air, you're existing, but you're not living. If you're not living as a free man, if you're not living on your own rules and on your own terms, respected and being respectful in the same time for everyone else. So these are the basic principles of dignifying life, which was taken from us for 350 years during the occupation, obviously, and that's why he was canonized.
Azar was Turkish.
Sorry?
Azar was Turkish.
Who?
Azar.
Azar?
No?
Who is Azar? Al-Azhar?
Al-Azhar.
No, dear God, no. He was a Serb, and he was a Serbian emperor, and he was fighting against the Turks.
Okay.
So,
Good.
and he died doing so.
Okay.
Anyway, his son built this church, and he built this monastery later on in the beginning of 14th century. In the mid 14th century it was already finished, and it was fresco painted inside and everything. The important thing that he did also is understanding that the south parts of our country are jeopardized, of course. He relocated the throne and the seat of the Serbian state, because without the seat, without the throne, where the crown is, where the king is, you don't have a state. As long as you have that, the state will remain in some form. And from the city of Kruševac, which was the old capital of Serbia at that time, he moves the capital in Belgrade. And in 1404, which is 600 and plus years, Belgrade for the first time became capital of Serbia, which makes it one of the youngest capitals of our country. And it's only 600 and some years. So by doing so, he prolonged the very existence of the Serbian state, even if it became in a way a vassal state of the Ottoman Empire, and we needed to pay taxes and all kinds of stuff, but still we have authority. So that was better than to be literally nothing. And for that he became great himself. This monastery is also one of the representatives of that very troublesome times for our country, and just by looking the walls and everything, you can feel and understand how troublesome times they really were, because you needed to protect your sanctuaries, your holy places, with something that you will consider just a military out. They were building in hidden places. I mean, imagine that like 600 years ago there was just one hidden path, like a goat path that leads here, that only local people know and the monks know, close to the water, so that you can have water supply and everything that can sustain you even in the long days of siege, which the Turks definitely were doing. Sometimes it was more successful for us to, they couldn't penetrate, but few times they actually did, and that's when they robbed and pillaged and also damaged the church itself as a part of the monastery complex. The old mess hall and the dorms for the priests were destroyed. It still lays in ruins. These are the ones that have been built much later.
For the protection.
Yes, absolutely. And this was not the only monastery that was built that way. So one thing was secrecy, so very remote, very hidden location, protected as much as possible by the landscape itself. Of course, there were no drones, there were no planes, there were no other ways than barefoot to try to find it. And as an addition to that, the massive structures, and this is one of the best preserved actually in this content.
As it is.
So yes, as it is. Quite completely original.
But this is new structure, right?
Yeah, used for those slings to spring slings to shot the rock across to hit the enemy.
Oh,
You know those machines
yeah.
that you put the rock and then and it swings and drops it across
Boom.
the wall to kill the enemy. So they are the actual ones that have been
Still.
for that purpose built. Ones dead or alive, it doesn't matter, because they're all same toward the God. Which was the way how it was traditionally presented. The one who built it, the monastery, and his royal cloak. Of course, again you can see the two-headed eagle, and his actual remainings are here, but it was buried in the other room in a secret chamber down below. And just one of our scientists who was convinced, due to some old data and something that he was working for a very long time, and he was convinced that it is here. And
Stephen, not that Stephen.
This one,
Okay, this
is here.
This is son
And
of
he
Lazar.
believed, sorry?
This is
Son of Lazar, yes. Of Saint Sava, later on. It's very simple. When you somebody that people know about, talk about, make folklore around it, that will be passed on generations to come, to remember who they are, from where they come from, who are their ancestors, how they came to be what they are. If you destroy physical evidence, then you can brainwash people pretty much, and in few generations you can tell the children of my children, this is not how it was, this was something different, and they would believe you because they have no evidence or proof. So they were very meticulous about doing so. So preserving his body and having him here and do all the biological research that he's remaining to confirm that is quite an astonishing thing, because it's not only he as individual that we know that it's him and it's preserved, but also the legacy and the history and the knowledge behind it also was preserved. And that knowledge and that history and that legacy
some of it that was saved us also in a way. The sarcophagus where the body was.
So the one which you showed inside, huh?
But that's inside.
Yes. But it was hidden. It was hidden because that was the whole point. Because if found, probably it would be permanently destroyed.
Okay.
As I explained, you destroy the evidence of some resistance. People lose track of it, and then that kind of mythology that is created in the people in time would be lost. And that folklore and mythology and the word of mouth of transferring this knowledge was essential of preserving your national identity.
So it is this one or that one?
It was originally here, but it was moved there. Yes.
Oh, okay. तो अच्छी इन्फॉर्मेशन दिया इस मिलान भाई ने इस चर्च से रिलेटेड, डायनेस्टी से, और वो जो एम्परर थे, और मतलब कोई दुख दर्द कहानी बहुत सारी है यहाँ पर, लेकिन ये इन्फॉर्मेशन आप रीड भी कर सकते हैं गूगल के अंदर इस चर्च से और इस मोनेस्टरी से रिलेटेड।